and then the green is actually showing their breeding range. So in Canada, there's actually two subspecies of loggerhead shrikes. So there's the furry population, and that's Lanius ludovicianus excubitarides. And then there's the eastern population, Lanius ludovicianus, migrans species. And you can see the green shows the breeding range for both. But the migrant species was only found in eastern Manitoba and Ontario. However, it's had significant declines. Both populations have had significant declines. But currently it's estimated that there's only 100 loggerhead shrikes in Ontario, and they've been reduced from a lot of their northeastern United States range as well. The prairie population is listed as threatened, so that means if nothing's done to try to halt their decline, that they will be listed as endangered and possibly extirpated from Canada. So both birds are protected under the Species at Risk Act. So for the prairie population, it inhabits a vast breeding range in the northern Great Plains. So in Canada, that's the southern part of the prairie provinces. It's been declining. It was documented since the 19th century, but over a 35-year period, there was a decline of 80% in the prairie population. And in Saskatchewan alone, between 1993 and 2013, so that 20-year period, there was a decline of over 70%. Saskatchewan's still the best place to see them in Canada. There's estimated to be about 70 prairie loggerhead shrikes in Manitoba, about 15,000 in Alberta, and almost 40,000 in Saskatchewan. So 39,600 in 2013 is the last estimate. And it sounds like a lot, but keep in mind that that's a 70% reduction over 20 years. Who knows what's going to happen in the future if we don't try to conserve this species. Besides their numbers actually declining, their range has contracted as well. So, oops, it's not super easy to tell, but this is supposed to be a light blue area. That's the historical breeding range. And the next grayish area is their breeding range in 1994. This says currently their breeding range is this dark area, but that was over 10 years ago, so it's probably contracted a lot more sense, possibly contracted a lot more sense. But yeah, we can no longer find them in central Saskatchewan. We do still find them a lot in aspen parkland regions. I've already had, 3 people tell me today that they saw shrikes in grasslands today. We actually saw some around Kincaid. But really the best is sort of Rosetown or kind of southwest of Saskatoon. And you can also find a lot sort of south of Regina, Rockland area, that kind of thing. All right, so what's happening? Why are loggerhead shrikes declining in number? Well, as with most other species at risk, it's many things, and we can't really pinpoint what exactly it is, but some of the contributing factors, again, like with many species at risk, is habitat loss, fragmentation of habitat, and degradation of habitat. So a lot of the agricultural practices that we do to put crops in the ground, produce food for all of us, of course, is going to have a detrimental effect on the species that used the habitat that was there. So converting native grasslands to cropland removed some of that natural habitat that the shrikes need. On the other hand, we did plant a lot of shelter belts and trees, like I mentioned before, so the shrikes are able to use those. But unfortunately today, a lot of people are starting to remove a lot of shelter belts. Someone told me today, a neighbor of theirs removed 28 miles of shelter belts, and that wasn't too far from here. So that's, again, it's removing even that artificial habitat that we've provided for them. Besides that, pesticide use has also been identified as a key factor. So to get rid of grasshoppers, other pest species, of course we use pesticides. I mentioned a few times now, grasshoppers are a main part of the loggerhead shrike diet. So being a top predator, not only of course do pesticides remove prey species availability for the shrikes, but it can also accumulate in their bodies. And even after the pesticides are done being used, or maybe they're not being used anymore, there can still be residues in the environment. So they've been shown to affect things like their eggshell thickness, clutch size, and other things that affect their reproduction. And then a big one with loggerhead shrikes, this is also a big one with a lot of migratory species at risk, is vehicle collisions. But with the shrikes, as I said, they're often nesting in shelter belts. And where are all the shelter belts? Well, they're usually along the roadside. So that's where they're nesting, and they're flying back and forth trying to feed their chicks. And so they can get into trouble with vehicles a lot. Also, roadsides are often used by predators as, basically predators just go along the road, so predation can be higher along roadsides. Okay, so now I'm just going to talk really quickly about our stewardship program, Shrubs for Shrikes, that works to conserve loggerhead shrikes in their habitat. So at the beginning of my talk tonight, I said that Shrubs for Shrikes was one of the 5 programs in the Stewards of Saskatchewan suite of programs. It was actually sort of piloted alongside Operation Burring Owl in 2002, where we talked to our landowners about shrikes, and they were really receptive to it and very interested in this bird. Who wouldn't be? Am I right? So anyway, we started a whole program just for the loggerhead shrike in 2003. Today we have 197 landowner participants that are conserving over 38,000 acres of habitat for loggerhead shrikes. But also keep in mind that this isn't just conserving that habitat for the shrikes, it's for all the species that use that habitat. For all 5 of our programs, we have the same 4 goals. So the first, our primary goal, is habitat conservation. And so as I said, we use those conservation ambassadors as targets, but the overall goal is to conserve native prairie. And I shouldn't say we do that, because landowners do that. I don't have any land that I conserve for species at risk, but we work with private landowners or land managers to conserve that habitat. They agree, for the shrikes, for example, they'll agree not to remove nesting habitat, shelter belts. They'll agree not to convert existing native prairie to cropland, and things like that. Then our second goal is population monitoring. So again, our landowners do this and provide us with information. We have a limited number of staff at Nature Sask. So I said there's about 7 of us. There's only a few of us that actually work with the stewardship programs. And every year, we'll send out a census card to our participants, and it asks them, like, did the shrikes come back? How many were there? Did they have chicks? Just some very basic information. And that can provide us with information from all across the prairie part of the province on the loggerhead shrike population on an annual basis. Our third goal I have there is increase awareness. So we're always trying to educate and increase awareness about species at risk, about native prairie. The more you know, the more you can do, and the more you can tell other people. So we do things like presentations like this. We hold dinners. We go to present to school groups, things like that. And then lastly, not only do we promote habitat conservation, but we promote habitat enhancement. And we used to do projects for loggerhead shrikes where we would provide funding to enhance habitat, but today it's more important for the shrikes just to conserve the remaining habitat, so those shelter belts and abandoned farmsteads and things like that. But if you have other species at risk, or if anyone knows anyone that has like burrowing owls, Sprague's pipit, or piping plover, we have projects where we fund 50% of the cost for native seeding, alternate water sources for cattle, or wildlife-friendly fencing. So we're looking for projects, so if that rings with you, give us a call. But for loggerhead shrikes now, we don't do those funding projects, we do beneficial management practices plans. And so I've just got sort of a short list here of some of the things that we would recommend to landowners. However, we always tell landowners, if you have species at risk on your land, you're doing something right, so keep doing what you're doing. But of course, number 1 for species at risk is to preserve native prairie. Or the number 1 way to preserve prairie is to preserve native prairie. Another one, of course, is do not remove existing shelter belts and abandoned farm sites or other nesting habitat for the birds. A good thing is to plant trees and shrubs at the interface of different crop types, as I mentioned previously, and to leave sort of a 2 to 4 meter strip of herbaceous vegetation. And again, this provides the nesting locations for the shrikes, as well as the foraging habitat with sort of that variability of different vegetation and stuff that produces mice and things that we don't like. Also plant thorny shrub species if you're going to, because they love that and they can impale prey all over it, make you sort of a gory Christmas tree. And then just some sort of things people do already, but just to mention, like clean up spilled grain and use bird or rodent proof bins, because if there is a lot of grain that's spilled around, you can get a lot of birds that come in flocks or invasive birds or things like that, and blackbirds, magpies, that kind of thing can displace our native species. And then last, restricting access of livestock in the spring to woody vegetation, as well as grazing lightly to moderately, but not heavily, because shrikes don't like that. And then in the springtime, the woody vegetation in riparian areas they're more susceptible to damage from rubbing and browsing and things like that. So we can keep those healthy. Okay, so maybe you can't do some of those things, but you still want to help loggerhead shrikes. So what can you do? Learn about loggerhead shrikes and tell other people. As I said, knowledge is power. Spread the word and get people interested in their environment. Plant thorny shrubs like hawthorn or buffaloberry even in your yard. You never know, depending on where you live, shrikes might use them. Protect any existing habitat that you have, and join Shrubs for Shrikes or other prairie stewardship programs. So I'll just leave you with three main messages. And number one is stewards are the backbone. So I said before, the stewards are doing all the work. We're just collecting it and trying to facilitate the conservation. So they're the caretakers of the species, and they're the ones who are out there on the land working with it every day. The second one is biodiversity is the goal. So I said over and over that we do target species at risk, but the goal is conservation of all prairie habitat for all prairie species. And many species benefit from that. Okay, and then last, what do I do if I spot a loggerhead shrike or any other species at risk? Give us a call. So we have a hoot line. The number is on the screen, 1-800-667-HOOT or 667-4668. We never share personal information of either the person who phoned or the person who owns the land. We'll just approach that landowner and ask them or talk to them about our program and see if that's something that they're interested in joining. Okay, so yeah, of course I want to thank everybody that provides funding to our Stewards of Saskatchewan programs and all of our talented photographers that helped me make this presentation tonight. And if you want any more information, but you didn't have a chance to ask me, go to our website, naturesask.ca, and follow us if you're a social media buff on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ashley. That was fascinating. I learned a lot. Those pictures were incredible. Does anyone have any questions for Ashley?
I told you I'd say everything. Oh no. Wes, yeah?
Who does all the data management?
Oh, that is so funny. So we had some access databases, and the individual coordinators had their own database per program. So Shrubs for Shrikes had its own, and the coordinator would handle that. Operation Perennial has its own, and the coordinator does that. But just in the recent past here, we've started to combine it all, and a very awesome volunteer is actually creating a website database for us, and computer coding all the pages to come up just the way we like it. So we're going to have it all online, but in the interim, it's actually just spreadsheets year to year. But we do actually submit the data, like our species data, every year to the Saskatchewan Conservation Data Center. And so they're like the hub in the province, for those of you who aren't familiar with that, for all species sightings. And industry, or like if Sask Power needs to change a power pole or something, they'll go to the Sask Conservation Data Center and see if there's any species at risk in the area. And then if there are, they have to just work their schedule, around the breeding times and things like that. So yeah, so it was just a funny question, because at the moment we're kind of in between, but the Conservation Data Center does get all of our sightings.
How many shrike sightings have you had this year? Like how many new ones?
Oh, this year? They just started coming in, so I've probably had maybe around 10. We've also seen probably about 10 on our own. But we did just send out the annual census card. And so we're just gonna wait and see, get all of our returned mail and see how many shrikes are out there this year.
You may have said it, but does their diet consist of any seeds or berries? That
I think, no, I've never actually looked into it, and sometimes species will surprise you with what they eat, but no, I believe it's just all, invertebrate insects and then those vertebrates.
As a landowner, what kind of agreement am I getting into if I do
Oh.
have shrikes on my property?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. So it's a non-legally binding voluntary agreement. We call it a handshake agreement. We do get signatures just because we want people to, or the landowners that are signing up to have that sense of commitment and for us to have this partnership with a signature. But they can cancel it at any time. And it's non-legal. And that actually makes it really attractive to landowners because it's kind of scary to get into something that's legal or in perpetuity. And so this is just a really easy way. Plus, I also just want to say that it's been shown that these voluntary agreements are effective. So there was a study done for Operation Burrowing Owl, for example, and it showed that the land that was enrolled into the voluntary stewardship program had a much higher rate of native prairie conservation than at other random sites that didn't have this agreement. So even though it's voluntary, non-legal, it's up to the landowner, it really is having an impact.
Next person, I live in Boundary here, and I would like to have, I'd like to grow thorny shrubs
Okay.
in my yard.
Yeah.
How would I go about doing that?
Well, I have some in the car.
Do you really? I
It's one of our perks to sort of landowners and things. We get buffalo berry from Shan Greenhouse, and so we have some seedling packs in the car. But so Shan Greenhouse, actually you would go through us because Shan Greenhouse doesn't usually do like individuals. They do more like farm or organizational scale things.
Yeah.
But we get seedlings every year. We get 350 this year, and I'm sure we could increase our order and we could provide that.
Yeah, that's good.
You can also buy, I'm sure you can just buy hawthorn and buffalo berry as well from,
Swift current.
Swift Current or something, some prairie originals, I'm sure has them.
Yeah. Any other questions for Ashley? Okay, well with that, I'd like to say thank you very much. That was awesome. Heather is still open, so if you want to grab a latte to go or books or anything like that, she's the girl to ask about stuff like that. So thank you everyone for coming, and stay tuned. Check out the PCAP Facebook page or website for other upcoming Native Prairie speakers here. So thank you and have a great evening.
Thanks, guys.